Developing your operational plan, there are certain things that you need to take into account. The first step is you identify your strategic objectives. What do you want to achieve as an organization? So that you set up an operations that meets your strategic objective. Remember when I started with the lesson, I said your business model and your value proposition are very important, so that you know what type of operation you need to set, so that you can meet the value proposition that you'll be pursuing. And good day, welcome to our lesson on operational plan. My name is Malosi Mageta. Today we'll be talking about an operational plan when you're developing a business plan. So what is an operational plan? An operational plan is a plan on how you're gonna execute your business strategy, how you're gonna operationalize it. Remember, with the planning, first you start with your strategic plan in terms of what you want to achieve. In that, you are guided by, call it your value proposition. What is your value proposition? What are you offering people? Or what do you want to offer people? So from there, once you decided on what you want to offer people, which is your value proposition. In terms of value proposition, obviously it must be something that differentiates you from other SMMEs or other companies or other organizations that are competing in that space. So your value proposition must be something that make you stand out. So from there, once you decided on your value proposition, then you're going to decide on your business model. How are you going to deliver that value proposition to your customers? Sometimes you can be a retailer or a service business or a manufacturer, depending on the business that you want to operate. So now, the business model, how you're going to deliver your product or services to your customers, it becomes the second most important that you need to consider. Then once you've decided on your value proposition and the model, the business model, how you're going to deliver the services or the product to your customers, then you develop your operational plan. Okay, when you're developing your operational plan, there are a few things that you need to take into consideration. One is how you're going to operate. So you'll be guided by certain things, or the industry that you're operating in and the type of business that you're setting up. So operationally, first you need to decide where you're going to put your operations. Are you putting your operations closer to the raw material? Or are you putting it closer to the customers? Are you putting it closer to the network? Or what's important for your organization? So the value proposition and the business models, that's why they are very important. So for example, if I want to set up a wood processing plant, the best way is probably to put it closer to the raw material, because I need to get wood, and sometimes the wood, I'll get it wet from the source of wood, and I need to process it before it gets to the client. So if I'm not closer to the raw material, that means I need to transport a wet wood to the plant, which is going to cost me a lot of money, rather than me transporting a processed and dried wood, which will be, one, lighter, and two, the waste will be already been taken out. So whatever I will be transporting will be lighter and without waste. But if I set up my processing plant close to the customer, then I need to transport that wood from producers to the factory. So that will cost me more, because I'm transporting waste, and you find that it's wet, because sometimes most of the time the wood producers, they dry it and they cut the waste and make sure that they produce whatever the product that they are producing. So it's one of the things that you need to consider. But if I'm a retailer, it doesn't help me to be closer to the manufacturers, because I need customers to walk in. So in terms of operationally, I need to think about that, to say, where do I put the business? Do I put it closer to the raw material, or do I put it closer to the customers? So if you're a retailer, you need to be accessible. It's one of the most important things. You need to be convenient to your customers. So you need to put your operation closer to your customers. Maybe you might be exporting. If you are exporting, you might want to be closer to the airport. you need to put your facility closer to the airport so that once you produce your stuff, then you can be able to transport it to wherever you transport it into, or maybe closer to the railway so that you'll be able to transport your goods to airport so that they can be delivered to your customers. So those are certain things that you need to consider when you're setting up your operations. I mean, as well, it depends. Like RMK is operating in training, and now with the COVID and all that, now it's technology driven. So we don't need to be sitting somewhere in town renting large office space, because now we deliver our programs electronically. We can have an office somewhere where it's cheaper to rent, or even working from home. It's an option because we are in the technology space and our clients are not coming to our premises. So we don't have to waste money by renting premises somewhere, because it's the type of the market that we are servicing and the type of the industry that you are in. So that's one of the first considerations that you need to take into account. Should you be closer to your customers? Or should you be closer to your raw material if you're producing something? Or should you be closer to labor? Because sometimes certain industries require certain skills. So you might not access that skill, maybe let's say in a rural area. If you're a technology company, it might be easier to access that skill in the big cities. But with the COVID and all that, people can work from home or they can work virtually. So it doesn't matter anymore if you're a technology company where you are putting your business or where you are putting your operations. Another consideration is your image. Remember, sometimes you put your operations in a certain area to create a certain brand or a certain image. So you need to take that into account to say, does your business require a good image, or will putting your business in maybe industrial area affect the brand, or putting it in a slump somewhere, will it affect the brand? If that is important, so you need to take that into consideration when you're setting up your operations to say, where do you put your operations? Do you put it in Sandton or whatever, a high-end area, depending on the type of customers that you are servicing? So will that area suit your brand? Because branding is very important when you are running a business. So you mustn't just play your business where you can find space. You need to analyze what is important for your business, for your operations. People coming to your premises. If they are coming to your premises, what type of people are you looking for? If you are selling, let's say, high-end clothing products, yes, you need to be in a nice mall where people with the higher LSM are frequenting. But sometimes if you are selling factory faults products, then you can be in an industrial area, because people are looking for the cheap products and they know where to find them. So in terms of the brand, it also plays a part in terms of you deciding where you are putting your operations. And another thing that you need to consider when you're deciding on the type or your operational plan is the financial impact. Do you have funding? I mean, if you have funding, yes, you can set up a state-of-the-art production or factory somewhere. But if you don't have funding, you might have to start smaller. So that affects your planning in terms of operations. How do you operate? Do you outsource certain services or products and then you set up a smaller operation? Or if you have access to enough funding, you can set up a Rolls-Royce of an operation. So financial consideration also becomes very, very important. To have access to capital to set up, or where you want to set up, can you afford the rental? Because it also becomes very, very important to say, can you afford the operations that you want to set up? I mean, if the customers are not coming to your business, that it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you will be able to deliver quality product and services to them. So if you are providing something online, you can be in the garage for all the customer can care. Customers are interested in you being able to deliver. So it's very important to take financial consideration. It's very important for you to consider the impact on the finances and your budget. How much would you need to set up? Sometimes you need to bootstrap. You need to start your operations as small as you can, and then as you grow, then you can buy those automated machines. But initially, you might have to buy the cheaper manual equipment, and then once you build enough clientele, then the business can afford to buy its own equipment. So financial considerations are one of the most important thing that an entrepreneur needs to think about, to say, can I afford? What type of operations should I set up given my financial resources? And another thing that you need to look into when you're setting up an operation is the legal requirements. Because some businesses require zoning, some require that you do your EIA before you can set up, depending on the type of business. So let's say if you are setting up a big manufacturing project, then you might need to be in the factory or in the industrially zoned area, because bylaws by municipalities and government, they require certain industrial businesses to be in an industrial space. And if you are selling things like petroleum or chemicals and all that, sometimes you need to do what they call EIA, which is the environmental impact assessment, to see if basically the EIA is to assess the impact that your business will have on the environment. So depending on the impact, then the municipality or the local government or national government or economic development can decide if they approve your business to be located at that area. So you need, when you're setting up operation, think about those things, that legislatively, do you need a license to be there? Do you need EIA? Do you need to be in a certain zoned area? So that you don't set up your operations and learn later that you are not allowed by local bylaws or the bylaws or the laws of the country to operate such a business in that area. So for you to move and to set up on another different place, it might be costly. It might be detrimental to your organization. So understand the legislations that apply in your sector, so that you can decide on the type of operation that you want to set up. Okay, in developing your operational plan, there are certain things that you need to take into account. The first step is you identify your strategic objectives. What do you want to achieve as an organization? So that you set up an operations that meets your strategic objective. Remember when I started with the lesson, I said your business model and your value proposition are very important, so that you know what type of operation you need to set, so that you can meet the value proposition that you'll be pursuing. And one of the things is the strategic objective. What do you want to achieve with your operations? So that you put in enough resources for you to be able to achieve your strategic objective. So your operations, you might need 100 people to operate, 100 machines, or you might need 2 people to operate 2 machines. And then as the business grows, then you hire more, or you go big in terms of starting an operation with 100 people, 100 machines from a word go. So you need to understand your strategic objective, so that you decide in terms of how do you set up your operation. Do you start small or do you start big? And the bigger you are, obviously more compliance is required, because the impact on the environment might be higher than when you are operating a smaller business. If you're operating a smaller business in for operations, you can start from home. For argument's sake, if let's say you are doing training, and then you can start from home, do online trainings before you set up a college. So the type of operation that you set up should be guided by your strategic objective. That's one. That's very important in terms of that, to know what you want to achieve. As well as the key performance indicators, there are certain things in certain industries that are required, like in terms of if you're operating, let's say, a farm where you're producing food, there's HACCP and GAP that you need to comply with. Those are the costs that you need to pay to make sure that you set up your operation in the way that is compliant with your industry legislation, so that you are compliant. For example, for you to be accredited in training, you must have the training facility with enough ablution facilities, enough ventilation, enough space where the learners can study and they can eat and they can relax, wherever. So there are certain requirements that are there. So when you're setting up operations, sometimes you are guided by the legislation or the requirement of your space. So make sure that you understand the industry requirements, so that when you set up, you don't set up an operation that is not compliant with the requirement of your industry, because that might affect your going concern. You might invest to only realize that you need a water license to run maybe a farm. So operationally, you set up this big farm, but you don't have water license, and it takes you more than 6 months to get a water license. Then that will affect your business. You might end up failing because you didn't look in terms of the requirements for you to set up a certain operation. So your operational plan in terms of what you can produce, at what rate, the quantities and all that, is driven by a lot of things. The market that you are targeting, the area that you are at, the budget that you can afford, the legislation requirement, access to resources. Because sometimes you might set up a big factory, but you don't have enough raw material coming through. So you don't have enough throughput for you to be able to maintain or to pay back the investment that you made in that factory. So the operation and the operational plan, it's very important to know the drivers. What's driving your operational plan? And now we'll go into the organizational details in terms of the operational plan, because you need to have human capital that will be able to deliver on that operational plan. Okay, now in terms of the organizational requirements when to be able to execute the operational plan that we've been talking about, obviously you need to have people in the right places. Okay, it can be a one-man show, and then just make sure that you have all the necessary skills for you to deliver on the product. So you need to know your operational flow, the process flow, to say, for me to provide this service, maybe you need the raw material. Let's say to produce a laptop, you need the raw material, you need the assembly points, you need the storage point, you need the distribution. So that's the operational plan. Will you be able to execute this? Will you be able to source? Do you have the skills required for you to source the raw material? Do you have enough equipment to assemble the laptop? Do you have enough storage space after assemble to pack the laptops? And do you have a distribution network to be able to deliver the product to the customer? So that's the plan now. That's the operational plan. One is the raw material comes in. It can be in terms of, if you are providing service, raw material can be your employees, because they provide your service. There's nothing tangible that you supply into to your customers. So one, the raw material comes in. Can you access the enough raw material for you to meet your strategic objectives? So when you're looking at your operations, you need to understand the source of your raw material. It can be people, it can be the actual raw material, or it can be finished goods that you are just retailing. But those are the raw material, the inputs. Once the inputs come in, how do you process them? If it's a shop, how do you pack them? So you need to have a plan in terms of how do you pack your goods in your shop. That's the operational plan. How do you do stock count? How do you make sure that when the person comes to buy, the process that they follow in terms of operationally for you to be able to sell to them? And then once the ones that are not sold, how do they get disposed? So that's your operational plan for a retail store. If you're a manufacturer, you get the raw material. Then you have equipment that needs to produce this. So you need to know the capacity of the equipment, the quantities that this equipment can produce, the storage capacity. When will you produce this thing? That's the plan now. Once you know the capacity, the ability of your team to produce the quantities, then you develop call it an operational or the production plan to say how we're going to produce the products. Once you develop, and then how you're going to store it. Does it meet the legislative requirement? Or how long you're going to store it? And now you look at the distribution, how you're going to distribute your product. The plan now looks at, one, we looked at the location. We're assuming now that you know the location, you're compliant, you are closer to whoever that you need to be close to, either your market or closer to your raw material. We're happy with the location. Now is the execution part. Can you access sufficient raw material? Can you process the quantities that you think you can process, or the quantities that your strategic objective require? That's now the second. The storage, if you need to be, will you be able to store the goods and service, those products in a safe environment that is compliant? And will you be able to distribute the product to the relevant customers? Now, that's on the execution side. When you're looking at the operations, you need to make sure you understand that, and you build your organizational structure in a way that it will be able to execute these operations. And make sure that you understand the legislative requirement on each process, each stage of the process that you have to go through. What are the requirements in terms of the labor law, protective clothing, standards that needs to be maintained? So even internally, you need to set your own standards to say, this is what is expected from this section. This is what is expected from this section. So that you know that you have systems in place for you to be able to operate efficiently. Because without you understanding each component of your operations, you might not be able to operate efficiently. So access to raw material, when you receive the raw material, where do you store them? How do you maintain them to make sure that they are in good condition? You don't have expired raw material and all that. So you must have a system there. If it's employees, how do you attract competent and professional employees that you need for you to execute your operational plan? That's now on the input side. On the processing side, do you have people who have the necessary skills to produce the goods and services that, if it's services, do they have necessary skills to produce the services? If it's a machine, do you have enough equipment to process or to manufacture the goods and services that you're looking for at the quantities that you're looking for? So now those are on the actual operation side. And then if you need to store, do you have enough space for you to store? Is it compliant with the legislation? Is it sufficient in terms of not damage the goods that you are storing? If it's a service, maybe you have enough computers or backup or whatever that you need for you to store the services that you have developed or the product that you have developed. And lastly is the distribution. Will you be able to have the skills? Do you have a plan? Do you have a distribution plan in terms of getting your goods and services to your customers? So now that's the operational plan. That's what you need to think about as an entrepreneur. You look at the infrastructure that you need to put for you to be able to operate. Secondly, you need to look at the actual operating process that your business has to follow. Make sure that in every stage you have systems and procedures, and you understand what needs to be the output of each process in your operation. Okay, now that we explained the operational plan, now we're gonna watch the video or listen to the video on our 3 case study movies. They're going to explain in terms of the operations of each business, which is now the McDonald's, and then we'll look at AEY, and then we'll look at the Auckland A's. So these are different operations in terms of how they're structured. So watch the video and we'll discuss after the video.
Operations. Operations is the crux of your organization. It's where an organization is made or broken. Operations are how the organization delivers value to its customers and how it runs itself. Entrepreneurs should be clear about their operating. Decide on the type of operation you want to build based on the customer segment you are targeting. No matter the strategy or market, operational efficiency is key. Do what you do the best way possible. When all is said and done, even the most operating processes are fallible. Take time to probe deeply into your operations to identify any inefficiencies and areas for improvement.
McDonald's has one of the best standardized operations in the world. Its operations is about speed and consistency. Standardization and modular operations of McDonald's allow it to easily expand and being able to franchise its operations. Standardization is about ensuring that all the operational processes are performed with a set of guidance, and this allowed McDonald's to replicate stores easily in different locations. McDonald's was able to grow because it standardized its operating system and were able to franchise the concept. Franchising is nothing more than just renting out the operating system. Standardizing your operations will allow your organization to easily grow without your direct involvement. The McDonald's business consists of franchising, real estate, control of the supply chain. Most importantly, system. Speed. They don't call the sector fast food for nothing. Speed is important. Efficient. Speed goes with efficiency. You don't want to do something wrong quickly. Convenience. With a reach. In the US, McDonald's is accessible like we have access to spaza shops. Don't forget, system. McDonald's operation is based on a modular system and they can easily be expanded from one area to another.
AEY's business model is outwork competitors, search, focus on smaller contracts ignored by larger players, pay good commissions to employees. They use money as a motivational factor. They didn't focus on soft HR issues like employee satisfaction, career path, and morals. Their focus was on making money no matter what. AEY's business model, therein no invention, no differentiation. They cast their search for contracts wider and deeper.
The A's operation is complex. It is different from making a burger or submitting a tender. It involves extracting maximum performance from players. And they are not machines. They perform differently depending on the day, and they have brains of their own. The operations are unpredictable. They are playing different teams week in and week out. It is not easy to standardize the operation process. Each match has its own strategy and approach. The team's operations and performance cannot be standardized. The operation of a sports team just has too many moving parts. It keeps the operation manager on their toes all the time. Billy was haunted by the decision he made earlier in his career, where he made a decision based on money. Him choosing the money that baseball offered over going to college. Billy's baseball career as a player did not take off, and he didn't have a qualification to fall back on. Billy vowed to never make a decision based on money again. His drive was not about money. He believed the baseball scouting industry was flawed and he wanted to change the game to allow small teams to be able to compete with large money teams. Complete the assignment. Compare how the topic is addressed in the 3 movies and rank them according to your preference on how the characters and the organizations dealt with the topic and motivate your ranking, 1 being the best and 3 the worst. Analyze this topic and its applicability to your situation and industry. Write up your analysis to meet the requirement of the industry you're operating in. Update the relevant section in your business plan.
Okay, as you've seen from the videos on the 3 case study movies, they are totally different operations. So now if you look at the AEY, they don't need large infrastructure to set up the operation. They just need offices and the computers. And they search all night, they find the tenders that they are looking for, and they phone around to find the suppliers and connect the suppliers deliver to their customers. They don't have to be manufacturers. They're just the middlemen. So their operation is simple. You need an office with a phone and a computer. And you search for the tenders, you apply for the tenders, and once you've been given the tender, then you phone, you find the reasonable suppliers, and then the supplier will deliver the product to the customer. So that's now the operational plan. It's that simple. Now you get to the Oakland A's. Obviously now their operation is different. They need the stadium, which is massive, and the stadium needs to be maintained. So you've got the stadium on one side, which you can consider like a factory. That's where everyone is training to produce good players. They need to go training. You need the gym. You need the infrastructure for your players to train. And on the other side, you need the administration, where the managers, the administration side of things are, where the players need to sign and all that, and the change rooms. So that's the operations of the Auckland A. You need big infrastructure. So to set up an operation like for a club, it needs a lot of money. Obviously, then you need to consider, do you build the training facility in the stadium, or do you rent? If you have the infrastructure, you can. If you have the money, you can build the stadium. But most of the time, because you're not using the stadium 24 hours, you can rent and agree in terms of the rental and when you're going to use the facilities and all that, or pay as you go, whatever the operational model that you go into, or you can own the stadium. You can build your own stadium and own it. But my understanding is that the Auckland A's was renting, because if you get relegated and you've spent so much infrastructure on the stadium, then you might get liquidated. So that's now how you consider the operating or the operations of your venture. And then on the other side, you have McDonald's. One, now they're okay with the strategy from Ray. They were buying land and building the store, and the franchisees, they just come rent from them. So now you need a property development department or a division that's going to develop properties. And on the other side, they are not necessarily producing everything that they sell. The chips, they need to come from somewhere, from one supplier. The buns, they need to come. The packaging come from different suppliers. So they need to set up a very strong sourcing department, so that the raw material that comes in, it needs to be managed, needs to make sure that it maintains the standards. Because, I mean, you have McDonald's all over the place. So the distribution or sourcing of the raw material needs to be on point, so that every store receive quality raw material like any other, so that the services is not different. And then you need to manage the franchisees, collect the rental, make sure the property itself is maintained, and the electricity is operating as it should, and all that, and is in compliance with the bylaws of the municipality or the state that you are in, or the province. Then on the other side, you need to make sure that the customers are getting the service that they expect from McDonald's. So that the operations of these three case studies are a little bit different, and depending on the type of business that you're doing. You might have a business that is similar operationally to McDonald's, where you are involving too many operational divisions, where you need to make sure that certain things are done. Or you have an average operationally, in terms, it's not that complicated like the one of the Auckland A's. It's not that complicated, even though it requires a massive investment in infrastructure, but it's the stadium, it's the gym facility, it's the administration block. You might have maybe 3 divisions in there that can execute the strategy or the value proposition of the Auckland A's. And then you have the simple one with AEY. Just need an office, need a laptop, need access to internet and the phone. That's it. Then your business is running. So you must be careful in terms of understand the nature of the operation that you want to set up. Okay, those were the key factors that you need to look at when you're developing your operational plan. And now coming to the app side, these are as well, one thing that you need to keep in mind in terms of your industry. You need to be able to identify the industry that you will be operating in. Then once you identify the industry, you need to understand what's going on in that industry. So in this industry, you might be in training, call it training into training sector. The subsector might be higher education. In higher education, then you might have the segment is business training. That's what RMK does. So we're in the training space, which is the global sector, and then the subsector or the industry we're in higher education, and then the industry segment. The segment that you're operating in is in business training. So you need to understand that in terms of the operation, and you need to understand where are you gonna put your operation, or where you're gonna develop it. If that's it. Or where are you going to be based? It's very important for you to know that. And then Other thing you need to understand is, who are your target markets? Who are you targeting? Where are they based? So that you'll be able to set up the operational or the operation that will be able to service your target market. So in terms of that, that's what all that you need for you to be able to complete your operational plan. That is the lesson for today, and thank you. And hopefully it has been a fruitful lesson where you'll be able to develop an operational plan it will help you be able to develop an operational plan for your business. I thank you.